right. So let's dive into something that I'm sure you're passionate about, and that's coffee.
Hmm.
Now, you might be thinking, what else is there to know about my daily cup? But trust me, we're going way beyond just the caffeine buzz today.
Yeah.
And we're going to be exploring some surprising benefits and, yes, maybe a few drawbacks to your coffee habit.
You know, it's funny. We often think of coffee as like this purely good thing, energy, focus, the delicious aroma.
Right.
But the truth is, it's so much more complex.
Yeah.
There's a whole hidden world of effects going on, from mortality rates to even its origins as, wait for it, a natural insecticide.
An insecticide. Okay, now that's not something you hear every day.
Right.
Wow.
It turns out that caffeine, the very thing that, helps us feel that alertness boost, is actually a neurotoxin that plants produce to ward off insects.
Oh, interesting.
So we're actually benefiting from a plant's defense mechanism.
That's a pretty wild way to look at it.
I know, right?
So this toxin is what helps us power through our day. But does that mean there's a danger in overdoing it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about finding the right balance, right?
Right.
I'm sure you've felt that caffeine-fueled productivity surge, but too much
Oh, for sure.
can lead to some pretty unpleasant side effects.
Yeah.
Even caffeine poisoning.
Oh, wow.
And that's where this idea of individual variation really comes into play.
Okay.
Because what might work for one person
Right.
might not work for another.
Okay, so moderation is key.
Yeah.
But I have to ask about all those studies claiming that coffee is actually good for you.
Okay.
So what about this link between coffee and mortality rates?
Well, that's where things get really fascinating.
Okay.
Both UK and Japanese studies found what we call a U-shaped relationship between coffee consumption and mortality.
A U-shaped relationship. Okay, I'm a very visual person, so you have to break that down for me.
Okay, so imagine drawing a U on a graph, right?
Okay.
The lowest point of the U represents the lowest mortality rate. And that sweet spot seems to be between 2.5 to 4.5 cups of black coffee per day.
Okay.
These studies showed this amount actually led to a significant reduction in mortality rates, anywhere from 16 to 29%.
Wow, that's significant.
I know, right? But here's where it gets even more interesting. Adding sugar was linked to even lower mortality rates.
Hold on, sugar. I thought we were supposed to be cutting back on that.
It does seem counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But the data suggests that those who enjoy their coffee with a little sweetness actually saw up to a 31% reduction in mortality.
Wow.
But the catch is, this benefit only holds true for 1.5 to 2.5 cups a day.
Oh, okay.
Too much sugary coffee, and the effect actually reverses.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot, both literally and figuratively.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about those who prefer decaf? Does it offer any of these same benefits?
That's the most surprising part.
Okay.
Even decaf coffee showed a similar U-shaped mortality benefit.
Oh.
So this suggests that there's something else in coffee beyond caffeine that is actually contributing to a longer lifespan.
That's so interesting. So coffee's more than just a caffeine delivery system.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a whole symphony of compounds at play. For example, coffee is packed with polyphenols, which act as antioxidants. They fight those free radicals and potentially even slow down the aging process.
So those claims about coffee being an anti-aging elixir might actually hold some truth.
There's evidence to support it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, one study showed that women who drank coffee had fewer age spots.
Wow, that's impressive.
Which are a common sign of, sun damage and aging.
Of course, yeah. Okay, so are there any other, hidden perks that we should know about?
Oh, you bet.
Okay.
Coffee's benefits go way beyond just, staying young.
Right.
It's been linked to a lower risk of arrhythmia.
Okay.
Despite the fact that some people actually feel like a racing heart after drinking it.
Oh, that seems a bit contradictory.
I know, right? It's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah.
But it seems that coffee may actually help regulate certain heart rhythms while counteracting the effects of caffeine on other parts of the cardiovascular system.
Okay.
And then there's the mood boosting effect.
Right.
We all know coffee can make us feel more alert and focused, but research suggests that it can actually help prevent depression and even reduce suicide rates.
Wow, that's a powerful claim.
I know, it is.
Is that because of the caffeine boost, or is there something else going on?
It's likely a combination of factors, but caffeine's ability to increase dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward, seems to play a role. And coffee can also inhibit cortisol,
Okay.
the stress hormone,
Yeah.
which further contributes to that sense of well-being.
Right, okay.
So if you're feeling a bit down, a cup of coffee might actually be a good thing.
I have to admit, I am starting to see coffee in a whole new light. So it helps us live longer, look younger, and feel happier.
The research definitely points in that direction.
Wow.
But there's more.
Okay, lay it on me.
Coffee can even help with weight management.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It can actually suppress appetite, boost metabolism, and even block the fatigue signal during exercise.
So coffee before a workout could actually be beneficial.
It could be.
Okay.
But there is a caveat here.
Okay.
We're talking about black, unsweetened coffee.
Well, yeah.
Adding sugar and cream negates those positive effects.
Right, right.
So no sugar-loaded lattes if you're aiming for weight loss.
Okay, noted.
Yeah.
What about diabetes? I've heard coffee can affect blood sugar levels.
You're right, it does.
Okay.
And in a good way.
Okay.
Research shows that drinking up to 5 cups of coffee per day can significantly lower your risk of developing type 2 diabetes.
Seriously? How does that work?
It's believed that coffee may actually protect those insulin-producing cells in the pancreas,
Oh, wow.
helping keep those blood sugar levels in check.
Okay, so coffee could be considered a diabetes defender, along with all its other superpowers.
Along with its many other superpowers.
This is all starting to sound a little too good to be true. Are there any downsides that we should be aware of?
Of course, coffee isn't a magic bullet,
Right.
and it's really important to be aware of the potential downsides. For example, coffee can wreak havoc on a sensitive stomach.
That makes sense.
Wait.
Coffee always seems to, hit my stomach hard.
Right. That's because coffee increases gastric acid production,
Okay.
which can be a real problem for people with gastritis, heartburn, or ulcers.
So if you already have stomach issues, coffee might make them worse.
Exactly. It's really important to listen to your body and, maybe consider limiting your intake or talking to your doctor if you have any concerns.
Okay, good advice. Another thing to be mindful of is coffee's impact on iron absorption.
Ah, yes, the iron thing.
I've heard about that, but I never really understood why it was a problem.
So coffee contains tannins, and these tannins can actually bind to iron in your digestive tract, making it harder for your body to absorb this very essential mineral.
So if you're anemic or worried about your iron levels, it's a good idea to be, strategic about your coffee consumption.
Absolutely.
What do you mean by strategic?
Simple timing adjustments can make a big difference.
Okay.
For example, avoid drinking coffee right before or during a meal that's rich in iron.
Okay.
Let your body absorb the iron first and then enjoy your coffee afterwards.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So back to caffeine.
Yeah.
You mentioned caffeine poisoning earlier. What does that look like, and how much coffee would it take to get there?
So caffeine poisoning is not something to take lightly.
Right.
The amount of caffeine needed to trigger it varies widely, depending on individual tolerance, body size, metabolism, all sorts of factors.
Right.
But generally, consuming more than 10 cups of coffee in a short period
Oh, wow.
could lead to some pretty unpleasant symptoms.
Like what are the warning signs?
Well, you might experience, muscle twitching, a racing heart, feeling jittery and anxious, even hallucinations in very severe cases.
Okay, so not exactly the focus and energy boost we're usually going for.
No, not at all.
I've noticed that some people seem much more sensitive to caffeine than others. Why is that?
There's a few reasons for this. Some people naturally metabolize caffeine more slowly.
Okay.
So it stays in their system longer
Okay.
and has a more pronounced effect. Others might have some underlying health conditions,
Okay.
like liver disease,
Right.
which can actually impair caffeine breakdown. And certain medications can also interact with caffeine, which increases its effects.
So it's really important to pay attention to your body's signals
Yes,
and adjust your coffee intake accordingly.
exactly.
If you're feeling jittery after just one cup, maybe switch to decaf. Or just try a smaller serving size.
Yeah, or even a different type of coffee.
Right. Okay. And speaking of decaf, that brings us to an interesting question. Does it offer any of the amazing benefits we've been discussing?
That's a good question.
I mean, does decaf even count as real coffee?
Right.
Doesn't have that caffeine kick.
Yeah, well, it is coffee,
Okay.
just without most of the caffeine.
Okay.
And surprisingly, studies show that decaf drinkers still experience that U-shaped reduction in mortality.
Really?
You just don't get that same mental boost from caffeine.
So if it doesn't have the caffeine, what's the point of drinking decaf?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. Japanese researchers have been exploring the effects of coffee aroma.
Okay.
And their findings are pretty mind-blowing.
Oh, okay.
It turns out that simply smelling certain coffee aromas can induce relaxation and a sense of calm.
Wait, seriously?
Yes.
So I can get a mood boost just by sniffing coffee beans?
That's what the research suggests.
Wow.
Yeah, and different aromas have different effects. For example, the aroma of Ethiopian Yirgacheffe coffee is known for its relaxing properties.
Okay.
While the scent of Brazilian Santos coffee can actually promote alertness and focus.
Wow, that is wild.
Yeah.
So even if you can't tolerate caffeine or prefer to avoid it, you can still benefit from the power of coffee aroma.
Exactly. It opens up a whole new way to enjoy coffee and tailor its effects to your individual needs and preferences.
This whole conversation has me rethinking my relationship with coffee. It's clearly much more complex than I ever imagined.
It is, isn't it? It's a perfect example of how even the most familiar things can hold hidden depths and surprises.
Absolutely.
And it underscores the importance of paying attention to our own bodies and how they respond to different substances, you know?
It really is a personal journey.
It is a personal journey.
With coffee.
Yeah.
So what's the final verdict? Is coffee friend or foe?
I wouldn't say it's either.
Okay.
It's more nuanced than that. You know, coffee has the potential to be incredibly beneficial, offering this range of health perks and mood-boosting effects.
Yeah.
But like anything else, it's important to consume it in moderation and be mindful of those potential downsides. The key is to listen to your body and figure out what works best for you.
Right, because what might be a perfectly reasonable amount of coffee for one person could be way too much for someone else.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
From coffee's surprising origins as a natural insecticide to its potential benefits for longevity, mood, and even weight management.
Absolutely.
We've really explored the complexities of this beloved beverage.
We have, and we've only just begun.
Ooh, that's right. There's more to come. So stay tuned, coffee lovers. We'll be back with more fascinating insights into the world of coffee after a short break.
So we've talked about the good. We've touched on some of the not so good. But let's dive a bit deeper into those downsides.
You mentioned that coffee can be tough on the stomach.
Yeah.
Is that something that everyone needs to worry about, or are some people, more susceptible than others?
It really depends on your individual sensitivity.
Right.
For some people, coffee can trigger or worsen conditions like gastritis, heartburn, or ulcers.
Right.
So if you find yourself reaching for the antacids after your morning cup of joe, it might be worth cutting back or trying a gentler brewing method.
Gentler brewing method. What does that mean?
Well, different brewing methods actually extract different compounds from those coffee beans.
Oh, okay.
Some methods, like French press or espresso, tend to produce a stronger, more concentrated brew, which can be harsher on the stomach.
Okay.
Other methods, like pour-over or drip coffee, can create a smoother, less acidic cup.
So it's not just the coffee itself, but how it's made that can affect how our bodies react to it.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it really highlights how much control we have over our coffee experience. We can experiment with different beans, roasts, brewing methods, even water temperatures to find what suits us best.
That's a great point. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Not at all.
Okay, so back to the downsides.
Yeah.
What about this whole thing with coffee and sleep?
Yeah.
I know people say you shouldn't drink coffee too late in the day, but I've always wondered why.
That's a great question, and it really all comes down to caffeine's half-life.
Half-life, like a radioactive element.
It's a similar concept.
Okay.
Caffeine's half-life refers to the time it takes for your body to eliminate half of the caffeine you've consumed.
Okay.
And here's the catch. Caffeine has a surprisingly long half-life.
Okay.
It averages about 5 to 6 hours for most adults.
So even if I have my last cup of coffee at, say, 2 p.m., half of that caffeine is still circulating in my system at 8 p.m.
That's right. And that lingering caffeine can actually interfere with your ability to fall asleep and get a good night's rest. It's not just about preventing you from falling asleep.
Right.
It can also reduce the quality of your sleep.
Okay.
Making you feel less rested, even if you manage to sleep through the night.
Wow, I never realized the effects of caffeine could last that long.
Yeah.
So even if I don't, feel wired or jittery in the evening, that afternoon coffee could still be messing with my sleep.
Exactly. And to complicate things further,
Oh, no.
that half-life can vary significantly from person to person.
Oh, okay.
Factors like genetics, liver function, age, even pregnancy can influence how quickly your body processes caffeine.
So someone who metabolizes caffeine slowly might feel the effects of their morning coffee well into the evening.
Absolutely. And this is why paying attention to your individual response is crucial.
Right.
If you find yourself tossing and turning at night, it might be worth experimenting with cutting back on caffeine or even avoiding it altogether in the afternoon and evening.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what about this idea of coffee being addictive? Is that a real concern?
Well, caffeine is a stimulant.
Right.
And like other stimulants, it can be habit-forming.
Okay.
For some people, that daily coffee ritual becomes more about satisfying a craving than actually enjoying the taste or the boost it provides.
Yeah, I could see that.
You know?
So you're saying it's possible to become, physically dependent on caffeine?
Yes, it is possible.
Okay.
And if you try to suddenly cut back or quit coffee, cold toki, you might actually experience withdrawal symptoms.
Oh, wow.
Like headaches, fatigue, irritability, and even difficulty concentrating.
That's a bit concerning.
Yeah, it can be, yeah.
So what's the best way to, manage caffeine intake and avoid those potential downsides?
Well, I think moderation and self-awareness are key. If you're enjoying your coffee without any, negative consequences, then there's no need to worry.
Right.
But if you are experiencing any of those downsides we've discussed, like stomach issues, sleep problems, anxiety, or even feelings of dependence, then it might be time to reevaluate your habits.
So maybe try cutting back gradually, experimenting with decaf, or even just switching to tea for a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways to enjoy the flavors and rituals of coffee without necessarily relying on the caffeine.
Right.
Remember, it's all about finding what works best for you.
Right.
What might be a perfectly reasonable amount of coffee for one person could be way too much for someone else.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
We all have different tolerances and sensitivities.
You do.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the pros and cons of caffeine.
Yeah.
But what about decaf? If it doesn't have the caffeine, does it still offer any benefits?
Well, as we discussed earlier, decaf coffee still seems to offer that intriguing mortality benefit, suggesting that there are other beneficial compounds at play beyond just caffeine.
Right.
And then there's that fascinating world of coffee aroma, which we touched on earlier.
Right, the whole idea of getting a mood boost just from smelling coffee.
I know.
It still sounds a little unbelievable to me.
I know. It's pretty remarkable, but the research is there.
Yeah.
Simply inhaling certain coffee aromas can trigger physiological responses in the brain, influencing our mood and alertness.
So even without ingesting caffeine, our bodies are still reacting to those aromatic compounds in coffee.
Exactly. And different aromas seem to have different effects.
Okay.
Some promote relaxation, while others enhance focus and concentration.
That's so interesting.
It's a whole new way to experience coffee and its benefits.
So if someone is really sensitive to caffeine or trying to cut back, they could still enjoy, the ritual of coffee.
Yeah.
And potentially reap some benefits just from the aroma.
Absolutely. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
Yeah.
Imagine starting your day with the invigorating aroma of, a bright Kenyan coffee, or winding down in the evening with the soothing scent of a Colombian roast.
That's a beautiful image. Like aromatherapy with a coffee twist.
Oh, that.
It really does seem like there's a coffee experience for everyone.
I think so. And that's what makes this whole topic so fascinating.
Yeah.
Coffee is so much more than just a beverage.
Right.
It's a cultural phenomenon, a social ritual, a source of comfort, and a subject of endless exploration.
I couldn't agree more. This deep dive has definitely changed my perspective on coffee. I'm starting to see it as, less of a guilty pleasure and more of a complex and potentially beneficial part of a healthy lifestyle.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Coffee, like many things in life, is all about finding that balance and enjoying it in a way that suits your individual needs and preferences.
Absolutely. Okay, so what does all of this mean for us coffee lovers? What are the key takeaways from our deep dive into the world of coffee?
I think the biggest takeaway is that coffee is incredibly personal.
Okay.
What works for one person might not work for another, and that's why paying attention to your own body signals is so important.
Yeah, it's not just about following like blanket recommendations or jumping on the latest coffee trend. It's about tuning into how coffee affects you as an individual.
If you find yourself getting jittery after one cup, maybe try switching to decaf.
Right.
Or simply reducing your serving size.
Yeah.
If coffee triggers heartburn, experiment with different brewing methods or, talk to your doctor.
Right.
And if you notice yourself feeling sluggish or irritable without your morning cup, you might want to consider whether caffeine dependence is playing a role.
That's a good point. It's all about finding that sweet spot, right?
Yes.
The amount of coffee, the type of coffee, the time of day, all these factors can influence our experience.
Absolutely. And that's what makes exploring the world of coffee so fascinating. There's so much to discover. Don't be afraid to, experiment with different types of beans, roasts, brewing methods, even milk alternatives or sweeteners.
Oh, yeah.
You might be surprised at how these subtle changes can completely transform your coffee experience.
I love that idea of taking like a more mindful approach to coffee. It's not just about, guzzling it down for a quick caffeine fix.
Right.
It's about like savoring the aroma, appreciating the nuances, and really paying attention to how it makes you feel.
That's exactly the kind of awareness I hope this deep dive has inspired.
Yeah.
Coffee can be so much more than just a beverage. It can be a source of joy, a ritual that connects us to others, and a way to enhance our well-being, both physically and mentally.
I'm walking away from this conversation with a whole new appreciation for my daily cup. I think I'll even try that coffee aromatherapy tonight.
I encourage you to.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful way to unwind and explore the sensory side of coffee.
And
who knows, you might even discover a new favorite aroma.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from coffee's surprising origins as a natural insecticide to its potential benefits for longevity, mood, and even weight management.
Yeah.
We've really explored the complexities of this beloved beverage.
We have, and we've hopefully inspired our listeners to really think differently about their coffee.
Absolutely. And we've also delved into the potential downsides, reminding ourselves that moderation and self-awareness are key to enjoying coffee responsibly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
And I hope our listeners feel empowered to approach their own coffee habits with a newfound sense of curiosity and awareness.
That's what we hope for.
Well, on that note, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of coffee. We hope you enjoy the journey as much as we did.